Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders Recognizing Leaders Career Talk. Tonight, we're in for a great treat with none other than the author, the extraordinaire, my good friend, Jessica Childress. It's such an honor to have you with us tonight here at Leaders Recognizing Leaders. And as you know, the talk is all about careers. And girl, you have reached your high point, and we are so honored to have you with us. And it will be hosted by none other than Krystal, our student leader, who is so passionate about the fact that you are in law. And she is so honored to be able to connect with you, to meet with you, to ask you some amazing questions. So, Krystal, the floor is all yours. Have at it.
Thank you so much, Edwina, and thank you, Krystal.
Okay, well, hi. I just wanted to start off by saying I'm so happy to be here with you, and thank you so much for taking the time to answer a few questions. And I'm just going to jump right into it. So,
Perfect.
what inspired you to write your book series, Juris Prudence, and what do you hope kids learn from your book?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I loved reading as a child, and I actually have one of my favorite children's books nearby. I have lots of books on my desk, but the American Girl series was one of my favorite books growing up. And Addie, she was just this very industrious girl. I don't know how many people on the line had read about Addie, but she was a slave and she escaped slavery. And education was just very important for her to progress as a child and into womanhood. And so I love reading, and I wanted to create a modern day character that looked like me, that pursued law, something obviously that I'm very interested in, and it's very much a part of my life. So I wanted to create a character that was contemporary, that was doing amazing things in her community. So that's really the origin story of jurisprudence. It developed from my love of reading and wanting to give children a new character that reflected.
It cut off on the end, but I could so relate to that. I loved reading as a child, and I still do. And I often like to write my own little books. So, what word of advice will you have for young people about writing a book?
Just start writing. I have so many journals of things that I wrote as a kid. My dad wrote a note in one of my journals as a kid saying, "I like what you're writing," but I wrote all the time. I wrote short stories just about uh, my grandparents' house, visits to my grandparents' house, and I really think that some of those influences are really seen in the jurisprudence books now. So I'd say start writing. Jurisprudence started off as just a few scribbles in a notepad. And now there are 6 jurisprudence books that are in hard copies in print that you can hold. But those thoughts really started off as hard copy scribbles. And I keep just a lot of little sticky notes near me. And so there are many times that I'll have an idea and I'll just post them on my computer to follow up on. So I keep a journal nearby. I always have something to write on so that I remember the ideas as they come, because it's very seldom that I just sit down and write out a whole book. A lot of my ideas come randomly when I'm biking. I think, oh, wait, this would be a nice scene to talk about because jurisprudence is a biker. So if I see something on my bike rides that could influence and create a scene in a story, that's something that I want to note. So I always just keep some sort of way to record my thoughts. You have notes on your phone, probably, so you can put down your notes in your phone. There are many ways to start writing. So just because you don't have this manuscript in front of you or a computer in front of you, that doesn't mean you're not creating or writing.
Yeah, that's amazing because you never know when ideas will pop in your head, and especially with notes. I love because you always have your phone, you could always put in little notes in there. So
Absolutely.
moving on, did you always know that you wanted to become a lawyer?
Pretty early on, I knew. I always tell the story of looking in the World Book Encyclopedia with my dad. We had a set of encyclopedias, and many people on this call are probably too young to remember when there was no internet and you had to research in a set of books. And so I wanted to know what a lawyer did, and I researched the term lawyer, and there was about just a few paragraphs about what a lawyer did. but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And over the course of years, I learned more about what an actual lawyer did, but I always loved the idea of advocacy, of service, and giving back. I had the opportunity to intern with the city attorney's office when I was 15 years old, and that gave me just the foray into government and what government attorneys did. And then in undergrad, I had the opportunity to serve as a first year judge on my judiciary committee. So we were able to serve as judges when kids got in trouble, when students got in trouble, and we gave them their punishment. Then I served as a counselor. So we were essentially the advocates for people who were trying to get out of disciplinary actions. And so I had a lot of training along the way that prepared me for the career that I have today.
That's actually really interesting and really good because I'm also 15 right now. So learning about internships, that's also a further question that I have. But next I was going to ask you, going into college from high school, how did you make your choice of what you wanted to major in since law doesn't have any specified majors?
Yeah, law is one of those topics or one of those educational fields where you can really major in anything. Some schools have a pre-law track, but there are several majors. I was a government and African American studies major. And so you don't need a specific major to go into law. You can really be, you can be a classics major. There are friends who are drama majors who then became lawyers. You really want to make sure that you're always practicing your analytical skills, your writing is so important as a lawyer, your advocacy skills. Those are the things that, yeah, your analytical writing, public speaking, those are the skills that you really do need as an attorney. And so many subject areas can teach you those skills. So I think if you're going to college and picking a major, you should pick a major that you're passionate about.
So you don't think there's any majors that may put you on top, like above others when applying to law school or anything?
I don't think so. My law school classmates had majors that were just so diverse. There was no one major. I think that there were people from many different majors who were in law school. So my friends who were classics majors were law students, and class that's a romance language, Latin. I took Latin as a high school student, but Latin allowed you to understand. It was very analytical. And so I can see how there could be some parallels between Latin and law. No specific track.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
No problem.
So you have been a recipient to many awards and honors, which I must start by saying congrats and thank you for being such an inspiring role model for future aspiring lawyers and young girls all over the world. So what would you say was your climax or peak in reaching these goals, and what made you stand out more than others in your profession?
Wow, that's a great question. What made me stand out? That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that question. It's very rare that I'm stumped and have no words. I think, I have wonderful colleagues. I have very brilliant people that I'm around all the time. And so it's hard for me to say that I stand out amongst these stars because I really see so many amazing people every day. I mean, Edwina and I we were interns on Capitol Hill, and Edwina's a shining star. And so it's hard for me to say that I stand out. I think that in terms of the recognitions that I've received, I've always followed the things that I love doing. And so I've been very true to what I love, and I've been able to do that in a way that just makes sense for me. And so I think that when you follow what you love doing, you're going to do it with excellence. I really do believe in doing everything that I do with excellence. And so that's my standard. And I've been recognized for that standard. But it's hard. I really can't say that I'm better than any of my colleagues. I think that I just really work very hard, and I'm just very grateful to have been recognized for it.
Yes, that's amazing. So just putting in your all and staying on track, that's the best way to go.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what type of law do you specialize in, and how did you decide to take that path of law?
I am an employment attorney. And so as a first year law student, you take classes from all across the gamut. There's actually a standard curriculum, but that curriculum encompasses classes such as civil procedure, criminal law, torts, contracts, and legal research and writing. So it's a pretty broad array of subject matter, but it's standard for all first year law students. Later on, you start specializing in different areas of law, but you don't really learn how to be an attorney until you're actually practicing law. So if you go to law school, you'll understand exactly what I mean. I clerked for a federal judge coming out of law school, and then I went to a law firm. And the law firm that I worked at, I was an associate in the labor and employment department. And I liked labor and employment. I had the opportunity to do some labor and employment projects when I was a summer intern at a law firm. And I like the subject matter. It's a nice conglomerate of both litigation, where you're actually in court, and transactional, where you're doing contract reviews and negotiations. So a lot of practice areas, it's only one area. You're only litigating, you're only in court. In some practice areas, you are never in court. There are attorneys that have never been to court. So people think that you're doing law and order stuff all the time, that you're up there making objections all the time. And that's just not true. They're different attorneys. And many attorneys have never been to court. So labor and employment is a nice hybrid of both. You can get into court if you don't settle a matter, or if there's a dispute, you do have the opportunity to go to court, but you also have the opportunity to be on the business side, working with business owners and working with people who have contracts, because their laws really a lot of contracts and negotiations, and just answering day-to-day questions that come up for people in the workplace. Like, there are many, many questions that come up for people in the workplace because there are many laws that govern the workplace. So that's how I got into labor and employment law. Just started doing projects for labor and employment attorneys when I was a summer associate, and then took a position in the labor and employment department after I finished my federal clerkship.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. And so I was actually kind of thinking about business law, like in business law. So what would you say is like a good internship for that, or like path to take down business?
Yeah, so that business law is pretty diverse. I mean, there are mergers and acquisitions. There's a department called, or there's a field of law called mergers and acquisitions, where businesses buy other businesses. And that's a whole field of things to do. And that's not my specialty area. So when I have done mergers and acquisitions work, I do it on the employment side. So I'm looking at employment agreements to see if people are under employment agreements, or if the employment policies create some liabilities for one of the businesses being bought. So that is, that's a part of business law, but it's very, very diverse and very broad. So I'd say if you want to be a business attorney, I mean, understanding the basic tenets of business, contracts, but also, working in any corporation that you can work in, or any business really that you can work in, to understand how businesses operate, to get a real feel for the day-to-day of a business owner, maybe some of the legal issues they have to undergo. So if you were able to get an internship in the law department, because every big company has a legal department. So getting an internship there is a wonderful way to start. And that's actually a very, very competitive internship for many law students, is to get an in-house law firm or in-house legal position internship. So I would definitely say keep your eyes on that if you have the opportunity to do so. And SEO, there is an organization called, I believe it's SEO, and it's been a while since I looked into this, but I believe that they're an organization that was around when I was in college, and they may still be around, and they have really great business internships. So when you go to college, definitely look them up, because they're just a wonderful organization. And they place, at least when I was in college, they placed students in very extraordinary internships that had business, that were business internships. And also Inroads is another organization that has great business training.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
What are 5 skills that is required by your profession?
5 skills. So the first, I think, is listening. You really have to be a great listener when you are an attorney because everything that someone says matters. So you want to listen carefully, listen more than you speak. It's really important to just make sure that you have active listening skills because everything that your client says really does matter. Then writing, of course, writing. You're writing. You can always practice your writing. When I look at things that I've written, years ago, I'm never satisfied because I think you can always improve. So always perfect your writing. So every chance you can get to write, do it. Another reading. I read all the time. I'm still very much an avid reader. I have books by my bed. I have a bookshelf right here. I have books behind me. So always continue to learn. As an attorney, you are really a continual student because the law changes all the time. So there are always new laws coming down. You want to stay aware of the new laws because if there is a law that affects your client and you don't know about it, then I don't know how good you are as an attorney. You have to be very curious intellectually. You have to know when to ask questions. And I really don't think there is ever a dumb question. You have to ask. And I think it's better to feel, maybe not so smart by asking than later on being in a situation where you don't know the answer when you really need to know the answer. So that's one thing. Be willing to ask questions. Be willing to learn. Am I at 5 yet? Because I have I have more.
You could keep going if you want.
Okay, so let's see. My last one, I'd say be willing to make connections with people. The law is very much, I think relationships matter in all of your professions. So whether you go into law or another field, relationships really do matter. So make sure that you develop strong relationships. Make sure that everyone who you meet, you're treating them with civility and kindness and respect, professionalism because you never know when you will cross paths again. The world is very small. And one thing that you want to do, I think people have the perception of attorneys that we are always so mean to opposing counsel or we're up there yelling and screaming and being belligerent, but that's not the way that attorneys who have respect, that's not the way that they practice. You should always practice with civility. I've never screamed at opposing counsel. I've actually, opposing counsel has said that I've been a very nice person before. So I'm always happy when we can come to resolutions and we can, walk away just understanding that we are working in the best interest of both of our clients, but there's no personal vendetta that we have. So we always want to make sure that we are practicing and in our professional and personal lives with civility.
Yeah, I so agree with that. I always like to be as kind as you can to anyone because you never know when you may cross paths again. And it's just like good manners. But on the basis of requirements, what are some requirements going into law school?
Going into law school, so you have to make sure that GPA is high. Law schools really do look at your GPA. They look at your LSAT score. So you will be taking the SAT at some point soon if you haven't already. And the LSAT is the law SAT. And it's, essentially the same type of analytical test, but there are different subject matters that are tested, like your reading. There's a logic game section. So if you like puzzles, that's your section. And there is a writing section at the end of the LSAT, I believe. It's been a while since I took the LSAT, but I do recall a writing section. So you want to make sure you do great on the LSAT, but your GPA is something that takes 4 years to develop. And so you want to just consistently, from the time that you get to college until the time that you leave, have a high GPA. You also want to be a leader. You want to be involved. And here we're in a room, an organization called Leaders Recognizing Leaders. And so you're already a leader. So you want to continue that path. It's going to be important throughout your career to be someone that leads organizations and that you have leadership skills as you go through your career. And so in college, there are going to be many organizations that you can join and lead, and it's going to be very easy to take those leadership roles because there's so many areas that will appeal to your interest. And for me, I found that there were so many things that I love doing, and I was just a natural leader in those settings because I love doing them so much. On the Judiciary Committee, being one of the leaders in the Black Student Alliance, that was just something that I really enjoyed doing. And so that it was natural, and of course, and it ended up that I was talking about it in my law school applications.
Yeah, I think that is really good advice. And I think I saw a question in the chat. Someone said, what law school did you attend and how did you like it?
Sure. I attended the University of Virginia School of Law. I also went to UVA undergrad, and I enjoyed law school. I met some of my best friends in law school. It was challenging for sure. That's not to say that law school wasn't challenging, but overall, I think the first year was very, very hard. I think I did cry about every day the first year because it was hard. But experience with my friends studying together. Those were memories that we'll never, ever forget. Late night study sessions and just going to office hours of our professors and asking questions about these very complex areas of law. But having that community of people who were with you so that you didn't feel like you were alone on the journey. I think those memories became so fond because they're very unique to your life. You'll never have another law school experience. So I enjoyed the University of Virginia. I felt like the community was very collegial, and some of my best friends came from law school. So it's an experience and a time I'll never forget.
Yes, that's amazing. And another question from the chat was, what was the hardest part of law school for you?
Yeah, I think it was very foreign. The stuff that we were learning, the subject matter that we were learning was very different. I didn't know what a tort was. Torts is a class that's taught in law school. So if you know what a tort is, raise your hand, raise your digital hand. Okay, no hands that I see. I didn't know what a tort was when I went into law school, but it's a harm. And there is a whole field, it's negligence really. So when if you walked into a store and if you were to slip and fall on the store grounds and sue for personal injury or for negligence, that's going to be covered in torts. And so that was an area that I just never, ever learned about in my life. I don't think I would have had any reason to, unless I was in a business law class in undergrad. I was just never exposed to it. I never had to do a deep dive into contracts. So I knew nothing about the formation of a contract before law school. There were very few subject that I didn't really know anything about the subject matter that I was going into. So law school was a brand new world. I think in college, you've at least been exposed to some of the subject matter. It might be more relatable, but in law school, a lot of the subject matter I was learning and hearing terms that I'd never learned, and I was learning these terms for the first time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard of that as well.
See, now you know.
Yeah. And another question I just saw from the chat was, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, my typical day, I don't have a typical day. I will say that I start every morning trying to get a stretch in. I try to get up early to start my day and write down what I have to do for the day, or the night before, write down what I have to do for the day. I check my calendar. So I swear by my calendar, my Google calendar and my actual paper calendar. It's actually right here. I have two calendars, and a partner at one of my law firms told me that you always have to have two calendars. So when you're busy, you want to make sure you don't forget anything or any phone calls or meetings. So I look at my calendar. If on a great day, I'll start my morning with some exercise. So I don't always do it, but I do try to start my morning with exercise. Also fill up my giant water bottle so that I have water throughout the day beside me. I also start with coffee. And sometimes I'll start with breakfast. And then I just go into the day. I start with some client work typically. Also have a company called Juris Prudence, which is a children's educational content company. So I am talking to some of our contractors throughout the day. I'm scheduling meetings, I'm doing networking meetings, and that really takes up the majority of my day. I'm also, um, let's see, I have organizations that I'm a part of. So I'm potentially doing an organizational event or doing a speaking engagement. And then I feel like the day is over and I may read at the end of the day. I try to read at the end of the night, just something. I try not to do too much Instagram scrolling. Sometimes I do, but like everyone, but I try not to do too much of that, other than maybe to see if there's something for the business that I need to look at. But I try to end my day with a book, and that's that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You always need an agenda. There's really good for organization. I also like to color code mine with classes. And ending with reading is just a great way to fall asleep, puts you in a good mood. So yeah, that's really good.
It's wonderful. It's something, and also meditation. At the end of the day, meditation just to calm your mind has been something that I've enjoyed.
Yeah. After finishing law school, do you find it easier to work under the government or a private practice, and why?
Say that one more time.
After finishing law school, do you find it easier to work under the government or a private practice?
So I've worked in both. I've been in private practice. I worked for the Department of Justice as an attorney, and I served as a federal law clerk. So that was a government position. And now I am a solo practitioner. So I have my own private firm. I learned so much in each of those settings. I enjoy being an entrepreneur. So my favorite really has been working as my own boss. I think if you don't like your own boss, if you're yourself, then I don't know, like there's a problem. But so I can't blame anyone but me if I don't like my job now. But I've enjoyed working as my own boss. But I have learned so much and enjoyed many aspects of working in a large private law firm. There were many aspects of working in government practice that I liked and learned from. Also, as a clerk, a federal law clerk, I learned so much and just really enjoyed working with the judge that I worked for, who I still talk to. He's just a great mentor. So I learned and appreciated many aspects of all of those positions. And so I think that when you are in the legal profession, it's really a revolving door. You're going to go through, many people go through many different positions. Some of them work in-house at a large company. So companies like Amazon, they have, or Google, they have lawyers that work in-house, meaning they're the attorneys for Amazon or Google. And then there are also attorneys that are outside counsel. So those are larger law firms that serve as outside counsel to the in-house counsel. And there are also government attorneys who serve the public. And then there are also smaller firm attorneys who do more specialized work. And so you will have many different career paths in the legal profession. There are many different positions that you'll have in the course of your career. So if you're considering the legal profession, it may not be the case that you're in one particular job your whole career.
Yeah, thank you. Because I've always heard of like choosing one after law, going to under the government would be good, or doing a private practice. So that's just some great insight. And I just saw some more questions in the chat. This one ties into one I've had. How do you prevent yourself from feeling overwhelmed with everything you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. You guys are coming with the great questions tonight. I think that you have to, I have a little note on my computer that says breathe. And so you have to make sure that you breathe and not take things too seriously. Also, getting that exercise in, meditation, drinking your water, keeping a positive attitude, staying organized is very important. And also, just making sure that you say no to things that are not going to allow you to get the rest that you need, because you do need to get rest and to rejuvenate. So I say no to a lot of things. Sometimes there's just I can't do everything. So if something looks good, an opportunity looks good, sometimes I have to say no, not right now. This isn't the time for me, because I'm looking at what I have on my plate and I just can't do this right now. And also getting help when you need it is also important. Getting help with your work, hiring people. I have a children's book collection, so I have illustrators. And I mean, I can't illustrate my book by myself. I have people who work on the website. These are things that I just can't do. So I try to duplicate my time that way.
Yeah, because you're only one person. You don't want to overstretch yourself. It's really good to make sure you have that mental side, give some time to yourself. So that's really good. And just reading some more from the chat, what undergrad class prepared you the most for law school?
That's a great question. Undergrad class, I'd say I don't know if there was one that prepared me the most. I took a lot of classes where I was reading complex text, like critical race theory, um, the sociology of African American communities. I was reading a lot and doing really, really complex research papers. My distinguished major's thesis, I was doing a lot of research and having to break down very complex texts. So I don't know that any particular class prepared me directly for the subject matter that I was taking because the subject matter was so different. I will say that I perfected my writing skills and my analytical thinking skills when I was in college. And also, I was taking complex classes, so just time management was important because you have, a certain number of hours of class in law school, and then the rest of that time is really yours to study and break down and be prepared to be able to put it all together the next day. And so that was important. I think in undergrad, I always was juggling a lot of things. And so being able to manage my time was so critical. And that's a skill that I have today that's really, really important.
Yeah, and I bet the calendar and agenda came into hand with the
Very much so. I think I probably time blocked better when I was an undergrad than I do now. But I was really, really, just really, really, it was important that I stuck to my agenda every day in college and really throughout my life. I've been a planner.
Yeah, I could agree on that. So another one from chat is what is your approach or philosophy to winning or representing a case?
That's a great question. I think that the most important, so winning or losing a case, and those terms, they're polar. Winning is subjective. Many cases don't go to court. Many cases settle. So in a law firm, you rarely go take a case to court. It's very expensive to take a case to court. Many cases settle far before they get to court. So when you are looking at a case, you have to determine, what's the best strategy in this particular situation? Do we go to court? Do we try to settle the case? And so that is going to depend on many, many circumstances of your case. It's going to depend on what your client wants to do. And so you always have to remember your clients first. So that's the approach. You have to put your client's best interest that's your client's best interest is the most important thing when you are taking on a case. So you want to look to see if that's a case you want to take on. Number one, does that case align with your values? Is that a case that, is the client a client that you want to work with? So that's really what I look at when I'm assessing, okay, how are we going to take this case on? I look at all the facts. You have to ask the client, what do they want to do? And then you go from there.
Yes, thank you. And I saw the message that we were going to be closing out soon. So I'm going to jump to like a few of my last questions.
Sure.
So in general, what internship opportunities would you recommend for students?
I think there's so many incredible opportunities. Edwina and I, we met on Capitol Hill. This was the summer before I started law school. And I think Edwina can attest to the fact that we just had such a great time. And I can't believe that was 2007. So was that 13 years ago? My gosh, that was a long time ago. But we had just the experience of a lifetime, and we were able to just create relationships that were lifelong. Edwina and I are still friends. I'm still friends with many of my cohort from our internship, which was the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's internship. I've also just had other internships through, I think CBCF was probably one of my favorites, but I have had internships with law firms. I, in college, was an intern with the See Forever Foundation, which was a public charter school in Washington, D.C. Another organization was an educational equity nonprofit when I was in college. There was also something called an externship. And that was just a really brief period where you could shadow someone in whatever field. So I shadowed an attorney in the city attorney's office. So I had been a city attorney intern when I was 15, but this was a different division. This was the juvenile and domestic relations division. So that was those were different types of internship experiences. They all had a legal, somewhat civil rightsy overlay, but at the same time, they allowed me to understand that there were different areas of law. I could see the nonprofit sector. I could see the government sector from the legislative side when I was a CBCF intern. And then in law school, I actually had very practical legal experiences that most align with what I do now. I was actually in a law firm working with corporate clients. So if right now you're in high school, I'd say do what you enjoy. I think it's the time to explore. I think you need to understand what you like and what you don't like to ultimately end up where you like, because you won't know if you don't have that diversity of experiences. So I'd say if you have the opportunity to do an externship, even if it's not a formal internship program, if you reach out to people who are in your community and say, "Hi, can I come to your office?" Or now with COVID, you can't do that. But you can hopefully, when COVID is under control, or even in this virtual setting, reaching out and saying, "Hi, can I shadow you for a meeting?" You know, if there aren't any confidentiality issues with the people that the person is working with, perhaps you can jump on a call so that you can see kind of how they conduct business every day, so that you can see, is this a place I can see myself in 20 years doing? Can I see myself doing this in 20 years? So every opportunity doesn't have to be formal. You know, sometimes it's just picking up the call and saying, "Hi, I'd like this opportunity." You really do have to ask for what you want. That's one thing that I've learned as a business owner. You have to be very specific about what you are asking for. So if there's an opportunity that you like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I saw that you do this. You're a banker. I really want to be a banker when I grow up. Can I please come to the bank and watch you do what you do?
Yes, thank you. I was actually wanted to look into externships during the summer, but I had to do more research about it in my area. But I saw the message that we have to close out. So
Well, thank you very much, Krystal, for your excellent questions. These were questions. I do a lot of interviews and podcasts, and some of these questions were just really, really, you guys should be on CNN. You guys are journalists here. I love it.
thank you so much for coming and taking the time out of your day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You all are very inspirational. So thank you for having me.
Wow, what a fantastic night to be able to sit in the room with young people, having an opportunity to be able to ask these questions of amazing leaders, experts in the field, persons who have been there, done that, and are continuously working towards being a mentor for young people. Jessica Childress, I can't thank you enough for being here. As you can see, they won't stop with the questions. And as you can see, these questions are really driven towards their career goals. And so we have to bring you back. It's because this is definitely an exciting opportunity. And I just want to end with just a couple of things. Is there any project that you're working on that these young people can learn about? I know that you have Jurisprudence, and so is there anything new that's coming up? Please just give us a couple minutes of what's next.
Sure. So Jurisprudence, she is the 11-year-old lawyer. I have some of the Jurisprudence books right here. This is the Jurisprudence's holiday gift. So this is the last book that was written in the Jurisprudence collection. But Jurisprudence, she's an 11-year-old lawyer, and she fights for the rights of kids. And so in the next book, Jurisprudence will be running for president, and she's actually the president. So I'm excited about getting that book out. There's also going to be a corresponding workbook about how to be a leader in your community as a kid. And so that's going to be coming out with the next book. So I'm excited about those 2 projects that'll be coming out next year.
That is super. And any final closing words for our young students who are just ready to take on the world?
I'd say continue to be in the rooms that you're in right now. Continue to be around leaders. I think leaders cultivate other leaders. And I think Edwina has it right when she started Leaders Recognizing Leaders, because you are, one of my favorite podcasters always says, you're the sum of the 5 people that you're around the most. And that is who you are going to be influenced by, the people that you're around the most. So make sure that you are being, or you're connected with leaders. You want to pick your company wisely. Leaders have different mindsets, they're visionaries, and you have to just be so discriminate when you are deciding who you're hanging around as you're going through the course of your career, because you're young and you want to stay on the right path. And right now you are absolutely on the right path. You're spending this Thursday evening online talking about your career. And that's just such an excellent place to be. Well, I guess in COVID, you have to be at home, but you could be anywhere else virtually. And so this is just something that you shouldn't take for granted. You should never take these times for granted, because the people that are in this Zoom room are likely going to be the people that you come across your 10 years from now. They're going to be the people who are in college with you. They are going to be the people who you're sharing an office with, because you all are going to travel in packs of leaders. And I think that you just should make sure that you're building relationships with the people that are in this room. Continue to do what you're doing, and that is cultivating just very positive relationships and cultivating your path to your own leadership journey. So thank you again for having me.
Super, super. And with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. A special thank you to our student host, Krystal, for doing such a fabulous job. I hope that you all enjoyed yourself in learning something new. I know I did. And a big thank you to our special guest, Jessica Childress, for coming and participating, accepting our invitation. And of course, I certainly hope that you all would stay tuned to future LRL career talks. So on behalf of Dr. Heather Sherrill, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to our next session. So good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.